Hi, Paula.
How are you?
I'm doing very well. I'm looking forward to another book talk with you.
Oh, and I think this will be an excellent one. We're going to be talking about some of the books that are coming to the library in June and July. So
Great. I know I have some favorites that I'm excited to talk about.
I know this is one of my favorite moments when we have books coming in, excellent recommendations to give. It's like Christmas, only better because it happens every month.
Indeed. Do you want to start with kids today?
Oh, I think that would be great. If you won't mind, I will get started with a few of the nonfiction kids books. One that I'm very excited about is called Under Your Feet, Soil, Sand, and Everything Underground by Jackie Stroud. We take dirt for granted pretty often, and we don't realize the complexity and different organisms that live there and what goes on underneath our feet. And this book does an excellent job not only explaining but illustrating the different layers of earth that are underneath us. I mean, it talked about how one of the largest living organisms is the humongous fungus, and it covers more than like half the world. It talks about the different experiments you can do using soil that you can find in your own backyard. This is great for ages 5 through 8, and the illustrations are amazing.
That sounds really great, Paula. So, having a 3-year-old at home, is it the type of book where you could look at it like a picture book? Younger readers and parents could point things out?
Absolutely. One thing that I really like about this particular publisher is for all their books, the illustrations are a full page and there's text near each of the different items that are being described. So what's nice is as you're doing a different run through reading together, you can point out different things each and every time, which is something when you're reading to children is extremely helpful to keep it diverse and new. And you can practice like, oh, let's try to find all the worms on this page, or let's see like what layer of earth we can find. And what's great is you can go into your own backyard and dig and see the different levels of soil.
That sounds great.
Excellent. Another fun one I have for a little bit older kids is Who Do You Think You Are? Find out about yourself in 20 psychology questions. And this book is by Allison Harm. This does an amazing job of not only providing a background to what is psychology and explaining the way the human mind works and what are the tests that we use to try to understand the human mind better. So throughout the chapters, they'll explain a concept and they'll provide a fun quiz to get to know yourself a little bit better. They have quizzes like, are you more left brain or more right brain? What's your abstract reasoning skills? I have found low. But what's amazing is a lot of the other tests show you where your different intellectual strengths are. I think this would be such a fun book to do as a family and to do the quizzes together.
I agree. I can't think of anyone who doesn't like to do a fun little quiz, especially when it's about yourself and find out if you're left brain, right brain, something like that. So great recommendation for families to do together.
Oh, and I have one more, which is not only beautifully illustrated, but explains a tough concept at a very early age level. The book is called Who Will It Be? How Evolution Connects Us All by Paulo Vietti. Um, I have read through this book and it is simply beautiful. It is a watercolor book explaining what evolution is to about the youngest age group I've ever seen published before. This is for ages 5 to 8, and it explains how all living organisms, as they have evolved throughout time, have a connection together and we're all very similar. It's very beautiful, very simple. It's the kind of book that you could take out the pictures and frame. It's just simply gorgeous.
That's great. Thanks for those recommendations.
Excellent. I was wondering, did you have any recommendations in the kids section, Brittany?
I do. I have two. So the first one is actually a series that you picked out for youth, Paula, and that is the Lonely Planet's First Phrases series. So the library will be getting Spanish, Italian, and French. And this series is aimed at children ages 6 to 8. And it has bold illustrations with every phrase, and it also offers a pronunciation guide. So families, if the adults are not familiar or the children are not familiar with the pronunciation, you can look for it there. And I did find when I was looking at this series that Lonely Planet has a pretty great online component to this. Instead of first phrases, it's first words, and I would love to just share that really quickly.
Please do.
So here's what it looks like. It is lonelyplanet.com/kids/first words. And when you scroll down, it shows that you can choose a few different languages: English, either in UK or the US, French, Spanish, Italian, Mandarin, and Japanese. And it gives an image, it gives the word, and the pronunciation for 100 words that oftentimes are a child's first words. And all you'll do is you'll click on one of the images and it will say it out loud to you. So this is a really great component to the books that we will have in the library.
Oh, that's great. I know whenever I'm trying to learn a new language, it's the phonetics that get me of learning how to say it.
Absolutely. And these ones from the few that I clicked on sound really good. They're clear. So it should be great for families. And the next book I had, the second one, is for kids a little bit older who I would say maybe starting as early as late elementary, but probably more middle school and definitely high school. And the book is What Can I Do When I Grow Up? And it's about thinking about a career for when you grow up. And I will admit that looking through it, I actually felt like there are some things in there that would be interesting for me myself to think about. Having switched careers from journalism to librarianship, I understand that sometimes we don't always think through what do we really appreciate in life, what do we want to get out of our careers. And this book does a fantastic job of presenting those ideas and having children question that at a young age before they really dive into college or a career right out of high school. So some of the questions really aimed at youth are, why are there so many different types of jobs? Why are some jobs boring? Which I thought was kind of fun that they threw in there. Another question is, how is work like school? And it also introduces different types of jobs that kids may not see at a career day. Things like surfboard sharpener, game designers, and there's really great illustrations to go along with it, even though it is aimed at older children. A few things that I thought were kind of fun for people of any age. There's a section where there's 6 ingredients, they call them, and it asks you to order them for what you find to be most important. And that's fun, friendship, curiosity, adventure, humor, money. And then once you have them in order, kind of brainstorming, what does that mean when thinking about our career? So there's lots of great prompts in there that, like I said, are great for middle school, high school, but really anyone, adults too.
That sounds perfect. It sounds like it would be a great icebreaker for parents to start talking to their kids about, let's think about a career. And I like that ingredient idea.
Absolutely.
That's perfect. To make a little bit of a transition, I have a few kid fiction books I would love to talk about. And continuing on our dirt theme, this is a picture book called Dirt Cheap by Mark Hoffman. And this is about Birdie, a very young entrepreneur who wants to buy a soccer ball. And she's trying to figure out, now, what do I have in abundance that everybody wants. And she looks around her neighborhood and she notices that everybody's working on their gardens and front lawn. And there she has it. She's going to sell dirt in order to make enough money to buy her soccer ball. Without giving away the ending, this is just a great book about a young woman seeing something that she wants and going and getting it and having an entrepreneurial spirit. I think this is a great book to talk to kids about, like, this is how business works. You look to see what everybody needs and see how you can provide it to other people to get the things that you want. The illustrations are really sweet. I love the little twist at the end. It is a great picture book. It's geared for kids between 3 and 7.
That sounds great. It almost sounds like it could be paired with the last book we talked about.
I thought about that, having like a dirt combo package with the two of them together. To go to a little bit of an older age group, this would be for kids that are in between J and middle grade. And it's called The Enchanter's Child, The Twilight Hauntings. This is the book 1 in the series by Angie Sage. And this follows Alex, who, after she's been adopted by a foster family, only has these magical cards. And when she touches these magical cards, she can see into the future. And she lives in a universe where magic is illegal. Having been outed as having magical powers, she runs off trying to fight off these hauntings, which are these animals that can take on any shape, to try to figure out who she is, what she can do with these cards, and to figure out who her family is. This is such a great story. Angie Sage has written quite a number of middle grade and YA books in the past, and this is the newest one she's done in a while. So she is excellent. And it looks so good. This would be a great read for those who, after finishing Charlie Bones and the Harry Potter series, wanting something else. This would be a great choice. And my last pick is a YA novel, also a first in the series, and it's called Raybearer by Jordan Ifiko. It is an African fantasy story following Taharsi. She is born into this global empire where there is a king and a crown prince. And every time they elect somebody into their membership, into, I think they called it a council, they cannot be killed in a certain way. They can prevent a certain kind of death. The only problem is that if that council member decides to kill them using that method, it will work. So Taharsi is set into the scenario as a plant. She is being sent there to kill the prince, who she has found to be a best friend. This combines a lot of amazing magical elements, a seaside castle, friendship, talking leopards, a great fantasy novel. The author, when she talked about it, said that this is a great book to talk about how you can't be afraid of your own demons. You need to embrace them and to find your own intrinsic beauty. So I'm very excited to see where this series goes.
That sounds great. I love those last two. I love all the ones that you talked about, but those last two sound really wonderful. I had just one youth fiction that I wanted to talk about, and it's actually a picture book for our youngest readers. And the book is a feel better book for little poopers. And you can probably imagine it is aimed at children who are ready to potty train, but haven't potty trained yet. And Paula, I'm sure that you know we have a lot of parents coming in who ask if we have books about potty training. You know, typically when a child is at that age, when mom or dad tells them to do something, that can be sometimes met with resistance. And so I think parents realize that when a child reads a book and they see it and they are hearing it from someone else rather than mom or dad, it's they might accept it a little bit easier. And so this book is one of the best that I have seen on potty training. It is a real cheerleader for kids who are ready. It's brightly illustrated, and uses a lot of great encouraging words and phrases. I also really liked that the story doesn't entirely take place in the home or just in the bathroom like a lot of potty training picture books do. There's a scene where they're outside. It also incorporates some children's favorite characters like princesses and firefighters because they all have to use the potty too. And so it's a really good book. And if someone's looking for a picture book for their soon to be potty trained young one, I would highly recommend this one.
Oh, that sounds perfect. And I like that this one's a little different, that it's not just about being in the home, it's about navigating the outside world too.
Absolutely.
Well, excellent. Well, I'm sure, Brittany, you have quite a few nonfiction books that you can recommend for our adult patrons.
There are some really great ones coming out, a few that I'm really excited about. One is The Case of the Vanishing Blonde, and that is by Mark Bowden, who has worked as an investigative journalist. And having been a journalist myself, I know all the amazing stories that you run into throughout your career. And having worked for the Philadelphia Inquirer, he's written for Men's Journal, The Atlantic Monthly, Sports Illustrated, Rolling Stone. He certainly has his collection of wonderful stories to tell too. I don't know if wonderful is the right word here because they are true crime stories, but incredible stories to be shared. So this book is actually 6 true crime stories that he covered during his time as a journalist, and he revisits those. The stories range from a campus rape at the University of Pennsylvania in 1983 that unleashed a moral debate over the nature of consent when drinking and drugs are involved, to 3 cold cases that feature Long Island private detective Ken Brennan and an investigation that reveals a murderer within the LAPD's ranks who was shielded for 26 years by officers to protect their own. So it's maybe not the most uplifting book, but I think it would really be a fascinating one for anyone who likes true crime. And another nonfiction for adults that is coming out is called Rockaway. And the subtitle is Surfing Headlong into a New Life, and it's by Diane Cardwell. And this is a true story of a woman who learns to surf following a failed marriage. And this story is really one of creating a new life and sort of resetting one's own life. And it takes place at Rockaway Beach in New York. And it starts with her taking the train to the beach. She finds a teacher, she buys a tiny bungalow, and she's not very athletic to begin with, but she throws herself in and she learns how to surf. Not too far into it, Hurricane Sandy hits, and the book goes into how the community comes together and rebuilds after, and also sort of rebuilds its historic surfing community there. So that's a story or a memoir that I think people who maybe liked Wild by Cheryl Strayed might also enjoy this book.
It sounds like an excellent book. I mean, I think a lot of people don't realize that there is surfing on the East Coast.
That's true. That is very true. Right. Yes, all along. And having grown up in Maine, I was always amazed at my friends who would go out in the icy cold waters surfing there. And so, very good point. The third nonfiction book that I have for adults that I wanted to talk about is Raising a Rare Girl. And this is a story of a mother who, when she was pregnant, like many mothers, do everything they can to create sort of a super baby, right? So they eat organic foods, recite affirmations, drawing up birth plans for maybe an unmedicated labor. And then what ends up happening is not necessarily that, not necessarily what you plan for. And her daughter has an ultra rare syndrome that she's born with that is Wolf Hirschhorn, sorry, Wolf Hirschhorn. And it's a daunting prognosis that she may not reach her second birthday.
Oh my God.
And the story follows the mother and the daughter. I'll read a quote from Goodreads that's part of the summary of the story. With bits of mozzarella cheese, a walker rolled to library story time, a talking iPad app, and a whole lot of pop and reggae, mother and daughter spend their days doing whatever it takes to give Fiona, the daughter, nourishment, movement, and language. And they confront society's attitudes towards disability and the often cruel assumptions about Fiona's worth. And I think that the book is probably an inspiring one in the end, and can make us all not only appreciate what we have, but also recognize that life doesn't always turn out the way we think it's going to, and that we can still find love and joy in those times that we didn't necessarily plan for.
Wow, those sound like amazing picks, Brittany, for nonfiction.
Since we're moving into fiction, would you like to share your adult fiction picks?
Sure. So I have two fiction picks. One of them is called South of Buttonwood Tree. Let me get that right. South of Buttonwood Tree by Heather Weber. This is a story involving two women and a baby. It has lots of magical realism. So basically, the Blue Bishop is a daughter, and she has a knack for finding lost things. And suddenly she goes to the buttonwood tree in the middle of the woods and finds a baby. Meanwhile, her mother is trying to figure out who she is, and she is at a crossroads, trying to figure out what the right thing to do and what to deal with the secrets that she has kept her whole life. And it's a story of mother and daughter and magical realism and figuring out what they want in life and how to fight for it. For me, I'm always drawn to stories that have that magical realism element. And to me, reading the description, it reminds me a lot of Alice Hoffman's work. So I'm hoping it will be just as good.
I think that you're spot on with that, Paula, as far as relating it to Alice Hoffman's work. When I was looking at it initially, I did think of that.
And then the other one is a little bit in the opposite direction. It's called Pizza Girl by Jean Koyoung Fraser. It is a coming of age story of a young, pregnant 18-year-old pizza delivery girl. While simultaneously mourning the loss of her father and avoiding her overly supportive mother and boyfriend, she becomes obsessed with another young woman, Jenny, a stay-at-home mom who's new to the neighborhood, who depends on the weekly deliveries of pickled covered pizza for her son's happiness. This sounds like such an unusual story and very character-driven, which always gets my interest. And I think this would be a great book to read for those who want to read something that's like Juno and Ladybird put together. I've heard it in reviews described as very quirky, sweet, and poignant.
And I will say that that book came in today. Well, it came in a few days ago, but after it has been quarantined, we unpacked it today. It's a fairly small book too, so if someone's looking for a fun, quick read, it sounds like a great recommendation.
Oh, I am thrilled to read it. I think it's going to be very, very good. And if I remember right, what's unusual about this book is that our main character is never named throughout the book. I read that in quite a few of the reviews that she's always just called the Pizza Girl.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know many stories that take that element because it's like, oh, what's her name? So I'm very excited to read it. It sounds like it's going to be something quirky and unusual.
That's great. Great recommendations. I have three for adult fiction. And the first one, we kind of have a mother-daughter theme going here during this book talk today. The first fiction book for adults that I want to talk about is Motherland. And the story is about an impulsive American woman and her headstrong Indian mother-in-law and the twists and turns of life that bond them together in the end. So the main character, one of the main characters, Rachel Meyer, she's a 30-something foodie from New York, and she moves to Mumbai with her Indian-born husband. And she knows that culture shock is inevitable, of course, but she's curious and has an independent spirit and determined to learn her way around the hot, noisy city that she now calls home. But soon after they move there, her mother-in-law suddenly arrives with the announcement that she has left her husband of more than 40 years and is moving in with them. And as the days pass, it becomes clear that she is there to stay, which is an uneasy situation, and it becomes more difficult when Rachel's husband is called away on business. So suddenly these two strong-willed women from very different backgrounds who see things very differently are living together in one home. They want to run things their own way, and it ultimately brings into question how can we live together? How can we make this work from different backgrounds? And I'll just read a small part of a quote from Goodreads is that the book is heartfelt, charming, deeply insightful, and wise. So it introduces us to two different women from different cultures. And in the end, it shows us how we really are not that different.
I remember that book now that you described it. As I was processing it, making sure that all the subject headings were in, so when patrons look for books that are similar, they can find books. And I just thought it sounds so witty. I feel like there's going to be a lot of great dialogue and banter. And I mean, I love reading about novels that are set in some place other than the United States. So to have it in Mumbai, India, I am thrilled.
That's great. So that is a good transition into another book that I want to recommend. And because it does takes place in Naples, Italy. And this book is a translation. The title is The Lying Life of Adults, and it's by Elena Ferrante, and it's translated by Anne Goldstein. This book came out, I believe, last month in Italy, and it is now available this month in the United States. And it was announced last month as well that Netflix will soon be making it into a Netflix original series.
Impressive. What's it about?
So it is about a young girl, Giovanna, and she's 12 years old at the start of the book. The description of the story, there's not a lot of detail about it, but the story basically starts where she overhears her dad saying to her mother that he thinks Giovanna is ugly. And the story follows Giovanna from the time that she's 12 until she's 16, her development from a sweet girl who adores her parents into a sulking, aggressive teenager. And it explores the concerns and the changing priorities of different ages and how strong feelings can fade and sometimes mutate during those adolescent years. The Guardian I had seen had reported that the book's publication was met with reading vigils all over Italy and fans queuing up to buy copies at the stroke of midnight. So this is a highly anticipated book in Europe, and I would say in the United States too, from what I'm seeing.
That sounds amazing. I mean, anything that crosses the borders of a different language in a different country, it has to be fantastic.
I always enjoy reading something that has been translated. There's usually there's some different there's some differences with reading books that have been translated, whether cultural elements are involved or just a different way of hearing it read. So the third book is one that is more fantasy. And again, this book doesn't have a lot of plot description along with it, but from what I can tell, Crossings by Alex Landron is really more about the inventiveness of the writing. This book is longlisted for the Indie Book Award for debut fiction in 2020. And Crossings is a novel in 3 parts, and it's designed to be read in 2 different directions. It spans 150 years and 7 lifetimes. So as far as a description of the book goes, a Parisian bookbinder stumbles across a manuscript containing 3 stories. The first is The Education of a Monster, and it's a letter penned by a poet to an illiterate girl. The second is City of Ghosts, and it's a noir romance set in Paris in the 1940s as Germans are invading. And the third, Tales of the Albatross, is the strangest of the 3, the autobiography of a deathless enchantress. And together they tell the tale of 2 lost souls traveling through time.
Ooh, I like it. It reminds me a little bit, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brittany, of The Shadow of the Wind, very like literary. It's a book for book lovers and story lovers.
Yes, I think so. And if I remember correctly, on Goodreads, it did say that anyone who's a fan of Robert Bolaño or David Mitchell may really enjoy this book as well.
Oh, that makes sense, because David Mitchell, we have quite a few of his books in the library, wrote The Autumn of Jacob, something or other, Bone Clocks, and quite a few different things.
Right, right. So those are 3 that I'm really excited about and would encourage our community to check out.
It sounds like we have a huge list of things that are coming out, and we'll be having more books than just the ones that we talked about today. These are the ones that we just really wanted to highlight and are very excited about. And Brittany, in case anyone was interested in getting a sneak peek or putting themselves on hold for one of our books that are coming in, where should they go?
They can go to our website, Minot-Sleeper Library.org, and you can scroll down a little way, click on search our catalog, and once you're in there, you can see everything that's coming up. If you do an advanced search and search by, sort by acquisition, newest to oldest, you can find them that way. The quickest way, though, to find new releases is right on the homepage. If you scroll down and just click new fiction, new nonfiction, youth nonfiction, youth fiction, all the new books are curated in lists right there.
Perfect. And all they need to put themselves on hold for any of the books is just their library card number and their password. And if they haven't set up the password, they can call us.
Absolutely. 603-744-3352.
And if anybody is like me and thinks about books that they want to put on hold at 10 o'clock at night and they want to make a reservation and don't remember their password, you can email us at minot-sleeperlibrary@gmail.com. Well, I'm so excited I can't wait till these new books come in, and thank you so much for talking about them, Brittany.
Thank you, Paula. This has been a lot of fun, and until next time.
See you later, or adios.
Adios.